This is called the cognitive obscurations. Because these are what is obscuring us achieving enlightenment. So a Buddha is someone who has eliminated both. A Bhagavan is someone who's got rid of this and this. So if we want to achieve enlightenment, we need to get rid of both of those obscurations.
I have something in my logic that I can understand. You said that if we have ignorance, we could actually reduce attachment, reduce or increase attachment.
If we what, sorry?
We're in ignorance state.
If we have ignorance.
So which means reduce attachment or increase attachment.
With ignorance, one of the results of that is we often end up with attachment to pleasant things and aversion to unpleasant things. So what I was saying before to the question over here was, if we want to get rid of attachment aversion 100%, we need to get rid of the underlying cause, which is ignorance. So the long term is we need to get rid of this. Short term is on top of this attachment and aversion that comes from ignorance, our conceptual mind adds more to it. And we make up all these stories about things and we increase our attachment and aversion because of these stories based on ignorance. Those stories we can start to now work with and let go of. So if we can let go of those stories, we can reduce attachment aversion. But if we want to get rid of them fully, we need to get rid of ignorance. So the short-term strategy is fix up those stories.
So which means to deal with those stories,
Is
deal
to-
with them in the meanwhile?
Yes, exactly.
In the meanwhile, this is what you're telling me?
Yeah, exactly.
This is the way to ignore them?
No, not ignore them.
Excuse me. Deal. To deal
For
with
example, this can be a helpful method. Let's say when we're looking at these flowers, we have some craving and attachment. While it's coming up, we can do this. We can say, well, they really look beautiful from their own side. Where is the beauty there? Where is the beauty there? Can you find the beauty? Is it sort of the green bit, the other coloured bit? Where is the beauty to be found there? Because our story is building up that, oh, there's so beautiful there. But if we step back a moment and investigate, can you find the beauty there? Because if the beauty's there, it would mean everyone who looked there would have to see it as beautiful because it's there. But not everyone who looks there sees it as beautiful. So what we can understand is that we create the beauty based on our pleasant experience. If we can understand that, attachment has no basis to function. Another thing we can do in a practical way is, and we know this already intellectually, that everything's changing moment by moment. No? The idea of impermanence. I mean, science has proven it. We learnt it at school. I think we all intellectually accept everything is changing moment by moment. True? Yeah.
like how we thought?
Everything. Physical world. I mean, if you go down to the atomic level, there's just change all the time. We know that. We learnt that. Is that intellectual understanding of impermanence, is that helping us in our life? No. Because our behaviour is not driven by our intellectual understanding. It's driven by our instinctive habit. So our instinctive habit is telling us these flowers are the same flowers that were here yesterday, same flowers tomorrow. That's how we relate to them. And that's our story. That's our story. If we're mindful, we can go, hang on, these flowers are really changing moment by moment. If we can really appreciate that experientially, attachment's got nothing to grab because it's just change there. So this is another way of reducing our story, reducing attachment. Now, in a practical way.
Okay, just last question. That you talk about pleasant or unpleasant, it's like personal perspective or it's like...
It's what?
the
This is not a choice. this is a result. So in every moment, see, there's two things going on in every moment of experience. There is a result. So the result is we have a certain experience, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. But in the same moment, we have how we respond to that. This is what we can change.
Yeah, because this is personal, the way that we respond, right?
And most people respond to pleasant with attachment and aversion, unpleasant with aversion. So this is where we can really now start to respond in a better way. And of course, one thing we can do in a very practical way here, and this is very much emphasized in a lot of Theravada Buddhist traditions, is just observe. If you have mindfulness and you're noticing something pleasant or unpleasant coming up, just look at that.
Without any feeling involvement, just to look.
We're not talking about cutting. That's running away. We're not talking about that. We're talking about 100% fully present and observing. We're not talking about doing this. This is aversion, in fact. We're talking about 100% present. If we notice something pleasant or unpleasant coming up, and we look at that with mindfulness, two things will happen. One is, now we've shifted our focus from the thing that's causing the pleasant or unpleasant to the pleasant, unpleasant feeling itself, so there's nothing feeding it, so it can't increase, because we're now looking at the thing that's causing it. And if we simply look at the pleasant, unpleasant, like everything else, it's impermanent. It will arise and pass. So then we can just watch it arise and pass and not go here. So this also is very practical advice on how to, short term, to cut between here and here.
Is it accurate to say it's like saying everything is in the eyes of the beholder?
Yes. So one way of saying this idea of emptiness is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But we have to be a little bit careful with that statement, because what we're going to see in the next session is that we can flip from one extreme to another. And sometimes when people say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, they interpret that to mean, oh, I'm just fabricating. It's just an hallucination. I'm just making it up. We're not saying that. That's the other extreme.
It means it's subjective. It means that the experience is in your eyes. It's nothing objective.
Exactly, yeah.
That's
So,
what it
yeah,
means.
so right, yeah. So if you understand that correctly, that is an understanding of emptiness, yes.
About feeling. You
Yeah.
said earlier that in the second wheel in the
Emptiness.
feeling is part of the five aggregates, and therefore it has a mistaken appearance itself. But its appearance is as something that is subjective.
So your point is that we have a pleasant or unpleasant feeling or sensation arising, and then?
You said that feeling is something we just have. It's not. We don't have a mistaken appearance about it.
No, I'm saying that this is in an experience. It's the result of causes and conditions that lead to having either a pleasant or unpleasant experience, and then?
Yeah, but before that's with the Theravada and with the Mahayana, they said it's part of the five aggregates, and that therefore it doesn't have an independent existence itself.
Right, but pleasant and unpleasant feelings exist.
Yeah, they exist, but we don't perceive them as they're not true as.
They're not independently existent, correct?
Yeah.
That's right. And then?
But we perceive them as something subjective. So if that's not true,
Subjective.
that's what she said just a moment ago.
Right, but here, see, that's why when we talk about beauty in the eye of the beholder, okay. We have subject and object, you know, and now we're saying that the beauty's not here. And we say beauty in the eye of the beholder, we're not really saying that it's here.
Yeah, that's.
We're saying it's the
It's a
relationship.
It's a relationship.
That's right. But that's often when people hear things like you said, they often think this.
Yeah.
I think this is where you're going with your argument.
Not,
Oh,
I'm
no?
not sure.
Okay.
But Well, the thing is that it came from the question before about the feeling, if it's
Right.
objective or subjective, but it doesn't matter where it's exact, the place that the beauty is exactly. But what I'm trying to say that the Heart Sutra tells us to that feeling is as part of the five aggregates is it doesn't have a true existence.
Correct.
And our perception of feeling is subjective, so that's not true.
Our feeling of
Our perception of pleasant, unpleasant is subjective.
Why, when you say that, it feels very awkward to me. I think the way you're speaking there is going in a wrong direction. So, again, when we say things are not objective, people say, oh, they're subjective, but then they end up at the other end of the extreme.
Yeah, but I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying
Right.
Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral are subjective.
Yeah, when you say that, that sounds very awkward to me. But anyway, this is not a problem. This is not a problem. What the problem is this. This is what we need to eliminate. So I'm not sure exactly what your question is.
Why do we see things as, okay, I'm trying to...
Through habit, through our past habits. Now,
So
why do I see this?
So
It's all habits.
So it's subject.
Yeah,
He
but-
asked before.
No, you're asking why we see it as attractive or unattractive.
Yeah.
The question we're trying to answer here is not why we see it as attractive or unattractive, is we're trying to answer how do attractive and unattractive things exist. We're not particularly interested here in why do I particularly see this as attractive and you see it as unattractive. I mean, that might be interesting to think about, but that is nothing of interest in this context because we're talking about how things exist, not particularly why you have a particular preference and I have a different preference. That's not of any significance in this context. The preference, whether you see it as attractive or unattractive, is not the issue here. It's how we see them in terms of how they exist.
The thing is that the misconception of feeling or the mistake appearance of it is also a cause of suffering.
Of course, yeah. Of course, as well, yeah.
So, but you didn't mention it as part of the things that we need to.
Well, it's here. I mean, ignorance would be grasping onto the object as independent, but also would grasp onto the pleasant feeling as existing independently. Of course. That's implicit in that. Yes.
You talk about to observe things.
To about?
To observe.
Observe.
Yes, I think that focusing it's more strong, and to deal with the feeling and the sense that you're in your body.
Right.
Then you can ignore. You can go out from ignorance.
If you, I didn't quite catch what you meant. Something about you and the body. What was that?
If you're focusing on something,
Right.
yeah, on problem,
Or an
on
object.
object or something,
Sure.
yeah, you're focusing, you begin to realize things. But your feeling, you need to deal with your feeling and your sense, your body sense, your feeling in the body.
Right. So. Right. Well, what's the question?
What the question?
Yeah. What's the question?
What the question is to get out from ignorance.
Right.
And not to get to the 3 and the 4.
Yeah.
You need to deal with the feeling.
No. To get rid of ignorance, you have to realize how things exist. So you realize there's no independent me, no independent world.
Yeah, but
Right.
not to get touched to the feeling and to the sense of the body, the motion of the body.
I think you've lost me.
השאלה היא, לא, אני אומר לו, אם רוצים לצאת מה...
Okay. Okay. Maybe we'll come back to that later. Okay. Was there one last thing I wanted to, because it's nearly time for a break again. Maybe one last question down the back. And the what, sorry?
The difference between ignorance and spirituality.
Ignorance is a grasping. This is just how things appear to us. So things appear to exist independent, and then we grasp onto that. So ignorance is the grasping onto that appearance. Okay. Okay, it's time for an afternoon tea break. When we come back in half an hour at 3 o'clock, I'll talk briefly about, or maybe we'll do the meditation first. Again, we're going to investigate me, the person, how do I exist, and then I'll talk about how that meditation, what are the steps in the meditation. So that's the next session.